The signal flashed incessantly on the control panel, its piercing red light like a demonic eye in the darkness of the cabin. My fingers trembled over the controls as I struggled to decipher the coded message that had brought us here, to this desolate planet at the ends of known space. Commander Hayes' voice echoed in my mind. "Remember, Science Officer Winters, our mission is vital. We may be their last hope." Last hope. Those words now seemed like a cruel joke as I surveyed the barren, hostile surface through the ship's hatch. No sign of life, no hint of civilization, just vast expanses of rock and sand under a sickly red alien sky. "Winters, status report." Commander Hayes' voice crackled through the communicator, snapping me out of my gloomy thoughts. "All systems operational, sir," I replied automatically, my eyes still fixed on the desolation outside. "But there's nothing here. The signal must have been a mistake." "Negative." Hayes' voice was sharp. "The signal is still active. Prepare for landing at T-minus 20 minutes. I swallowed, feeling a knot forming in my stomach. Something about this place was wrong, terribly wrong. The air seemed heavy with an invisible threat, as if the planet itself was watching us, waiting. As I prepared for the reconnaissance mission, I couldn't help thinking about how it had all started. It was supposed to be a simple routine mission, mapping distant star systems in search of habitable planets. Then we picked up the signal, faint at first, almost imperceptible amid the cosmic noise in the background. But as we got closer to its source, it became stronger, more urgent. A sequence of pulses that our computers identified as a distress call in an ancient alien code. The initial excitement of the discovery soon gave way to a sense of duty. If there was a civilization in danger, we had an obligation to help. So our small team of 5 embarked on this journey to the limits of known space, following the desperate call of an unknown race. Now, standing in front of the mirror in the tiny cabin I had called home for months, I barely recognized the man staring back at me. My eyes, once bright with the promise of scientific discoveries, were now deep and haunted. The uniform I had worn so proudly now seemed like flimsy armor against the unknown that awaited us. T-minus 10 minutes, Hayes' voice sounded again, cold and metallic through the communication system. With one last look at my reflection, I sealed my spacesuit helmet and headed for the decompression chamber. The rest of the team were already there. Hayes, his face a mask of determination. Rodriguez, our communications specialist, his fingers drumming nervously on his leg. Chen, the engineer, meticulously checking every seal on his suit. And Kowalski, our doctor, her alert eyes examining each one of us. As the outer door opened, revealing the alien landscape, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The air that came in was thin and icy, carrying a strange metallic smell that penetrated even through the filters of our suits. "Stay alert," Hayes ordered as we descended the ramp. "Winters, start scanning. Rodriguez, keep trying to amplify the signal. Chen, check the atmospheric composition. Kowalski, keep an eye on our vital signs." I nodded, activating the sensors in my suit. The data began to flow, numbers and graphs dancing before my eyes on the helmet screen. Nothing made sense. The composition of the soil, the atmospheric readings, everything was outside the normal parameters for a supposedly inhabited planet. We walked in silence, our boots leaving marks in the reddish sand. The horizon was an irregular line of distorted rock formations, like teeth in a monstrous mouth ready to swallow us. The sun of this system, a dying red giant, hung low in the sky, bathing everything in a bloody light. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a trick of the alien light on my tired eyes, but as we got closer, the shape became unmistakable. A structure, not natural, definitely built. "Commander," my voice faltered. "I think we've found something." Hayes turned sharply, following my gaze. For a moment, we were all paralyzed, contemplating the evidence that we were not alone. The structure was a twisted tower of metal and rock, its surface covered in strange symbols that seemed to change and contort under our gaze. At the top, a light pulsed in the same rhythm as the signal we had followed. "That's impossible," muttered Rodriguez, his voice trembling with astonishment and fear. "The readings show that this structure is millions of years old." "How can it be emitting a signal?" asked Chen, his normally calm voice now tinged with apprehension. Before anyone could answer, a sound reverberated through the planet, a deep, agonizing wail that seemed to come from within the Earth itself. The ground beneath our feet began to shake. "Everyone, back to the ship, now!" shouted Hayes. But it was too late. The sand around us began to move, as if it were alive. Dark shapes emerged, creatures that defied comprehension. Tentacles of shadow stretched out towards us. In panic, I ran. The sound of screams filled my communicator. I looked back just once, in time to see Rodriguez being dragged under the sand, her face a mask of pure terror. I reached the ramp of the ship, my lungs burning, my heart threatening to explode in my chest. When the door closed behind me, I realized that I was alone. The others, they had. The ground continued to shake. Through the hatch, I saw the alien tower glow with an eerie light. The signal, I understood with growing horror, was not a distress call. It was a trap, and we had fallen straight into it. As the ship took off, driven by emergency protocols, I knew I was leaving my companions behind. But I also knew that I had to survive. I had to warn the others. This planet, this thing, could not be allowed to attract more victims. As the stars became blurs around me, I made a silent promise. I would survive. I would tell our story. And somehow, some way, I would find a way to stop it from happening again. But as the darkness of space enveloped me, I couldn't help but wonder, wasn't it already too late? The silence was deafening. After the chaos and terror of that damned planet, the stillness of the ship seemed unnatural, almost obscene. My ears still echoed with the screams of my companions, screams that I knew would haunt me for the rest of my days. Sitting in the pilot's chair, I watched the emptiness of space through the cockpit window. The stars seemed cold and distant, indifferent to the horror I had just witnessed. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I tried to set a course back to Earth, to home, to safety. But was there safety? After what I'd seen, what I'd experienced, could anywhere in the universe be truly safe? The ship's systems hummed softly around me, a constant reminder that I was alone, completely alone. The realization of this hit me like a punch in the stomach, and I bent over the control panel, fighting a wave of nausea. "Get a grip, Winters," I muttered to myself, my voice hoarse and unrecognizable. "You need to stay focused." I forced myself to take deep breaths, trying to calm my panicked mind. I needed to think rationally, to assess my situation. First, I checked the ship's systems. Miraculously, despite the abrupt takeoff, everything seemed to be working normally. The fuel levels were adequate for the return journey. The life support systems were stable. Next, I took stock of the supplies. Enough food and water for several weeks, if I rationed carefully. Medical kits intact. Everything seemed to be in order. But then, why couldn't I get rid of the feeling that something was terribly wrong? I turned my attention to the mission logs. I needed to document what had happened to ensure that there was an accurate account of events for when I returned. If I returned, mission log, stardate, I began, but my voice failed me. What day was it? How long had we spent on that hellish planet? Time seemed to have lost all meaning. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. Mission log, I tried again. This is Scientific Officer Winters. I am the sole survivor of the expedition to the planet designated XP-2547. The team was... The words got stuck in my throat. How could I describe what had happened? How could I put into words the unspeakable horror we had witnessed? A sudden sound made me jump out of my chair, my heart racing. For a moment of pure panic, I thought that the creatures had somehow followed me, that they had invaded the ship. But it was only the communication system, emitting static. I cautiously approached the communication panel. The static continued, but there was something else. A pattern, a rhythm. My blood ran cold when I realized it was the same signal. The damn signal that had lured us into that death trap. "No!" I whispered, fear squeezing my chest. No, no, no! I switched off the communication system with trembling hands, but the damage had already been done. Doubt settled into my mind like a parasite. What if the signal wasn't coming from outside the ship? What if, somehow, I had brought it with me? The next few days, or was it weeks, passed in a blur of paranoia and exhaustion. I hardly slept, plagued by nightmares whenever I managed to close my eyes. In the few hours of restless repose, I saw the faces of my companions, their expressions frozen in terror as they were dragged into the depths of that cursed planet. Loneliness began to weigh on me like a suffocating blanket. I found myself talking out loud, first just muttering to myself, then having full conversations with imaginary interlocutors. Sometimes I swore I heard the voices of my lost companions calling out to me in the dark corners of the ship. I began to question my own sanity. Had I really escaped? Or was all this, the escape, the lonely journey back, just an elaborate hallucination created by my mind while my body was being consumed by those hideous creatures? In a moment of desperation, I even considered opening the hatch and throwing myself into the void of space. At least then I could be sure that it would all be over, but something stopped me. A stubborn spark of hope, perhaps, or maybe just the primal fear of death. It was during one of these dark moments of contemplation that I noticed something strange. A stain on my arm, just below the sleeve of my uniform. At first, I thought it was just a shadow, a trick of the ship's dim lighting. But when I looked more closely, my heart almost stopped. The spot was moving, subtly, almost imperceptibly, but it was moving and growing. With trembling fingers, I tore the sleeve of my uniform. The sight that greeted me almost made me faint with horror. My skin was changing, darkening and twisting, as if something was moving beneath it. I screamed, an animalistic, primal sound that echoed through the empty corridors of the ship. I ran to the infirmary, knocking over equipment in my desperate haste. I had to cut it out, remove whatever it was before it spread. I grabbed a scalpel, its blade glinting in the cold lights of the infirmary. With a determination born of sheer terror, I pressed the blade against my skin. The pain was intense, but I barely felt it through the wave of adrenaline and fear. Blood ran down my arm, but it wasn't red. It was dark, almost black, and seemed to move with a life of its own. And then I saw it, emerging from the wound I had made myself. A thin, dark tentacle twitched. The scalpel fell from my trembling hand, clinking on the metallic floor of the infirmary. I staggered backwards, my mind refusing to accept what my eyes were seeing. "No," I mumbled, my voice broken and unrecognizable. "No, please, no." But as I watched, horrified, more tentacles began to emerge, not just from the cut on my arm, but from every pore of my skin. The realization hit me with terrible clarity. I hadn't escaped. I had never escaped. The planet, that thing, was in me, and I was taking it straight to Earth. As darkness began to take over my vision, my last coherent thought was a silent prayer, that the ship would never reach its destination, that I would be the last to fall into this cosmic trap. But even as consciousness left me, I knew the signal would continue, and others would come. There would always be others. The horror had only just begun. The darkness slowly receded, like a black tide reluctant to leave the shore. My eyes opened, blinking against the cold, impersonal light of the infirmary. For a fleeting moment, I hoped it had all just been a terrible nightmare, but the stabbing pain in my arm and the metallic smell of blood in the air were cruel reminders of reality. I forced myself to sit up, ignoring the dizziness that threatened to knock me down again. My arm. I hesitated, fearing what I would find, but I knew I had to look. Slowly, I turned my head. The sight almost made me vomit. The cut I had made was there, but it wasn't bleeding. Instead, the wound seemed sealed, not by skin, but by something dark and slimy that pulsed gently. The tentacles I had seen before had disappeared, but the skin around the cut was marked with strange spiral patterns, like alien tattoos that moved subtly under my gaze. "This can't be happening," I muttered. my voice hoarse and unrecognizable. This isn't real. But it was real. Terribly, undeniably real. On shaky legs, I stood up and staggered over to the small mirror in the ward. The face that stared back at me was a mask of horror. My eyes, once a vivid blue, now had a strange, almost phosphorescent glow. Dark veins branched out under my pale skin, pulsing with a life of their own. A sound escaped my throat, a low, animal moan of despair and fear. What was happening to me? What had that thing, that damned planet, done? I staggered back to the cockpit, my mind a whirlwind of frantic thoughts. I had to do something. I needed to stop it from spreading. I had to... The control panel flickered to life as I approached, as if responding to my presence. Numbers and graphs danced before my eyes, but something was wrong. The readings didn't make sense. The ship was moving faster than should have been possible, crossing space at a speed that defied the laws of physics that I knew. "Computer," I called out, my voice shaking. "What is our current position?" The answer came in a monotone and indifferent tone that contrasted brutally with the panic I felt. "Current position unknown. Navigation parameters exceeded known mapping limits." My stomach churned. We were lost in unknown space, traveling at an impossible speed to a destination I couldn't even begin to imagine. That's when I heard it. At first, I thought it was just the hum of the ship's systems, but as I concentrated, I realized it was something more. A song. No, not a song. A chant. An alien, hypnotic, terrible chant that seemed to be coming from inside my own head. I covered my ears with my hands, but the sound only got louder. It was as if every cell in my body was resonating with that unholy melody, and with the sound came knowledge. Knowledge that no human being should possess. I saw galaxies spinning in the void, being born and dying in the blink of a cosmic eye. I saw civilizations rise and fall, their histories no more than grains of sand on the infinite beach of time. And I saw them, the ancients, the beings who existed before the first atom was formed, who would shape the universe according to their incomprehensible will. I fell to my knees, my mind reeling under the weight of this forbidden knowledge. Tears of blood streamed down my face as I fought to keep my sanity. "No," I screamed into the void. "I don't want it. I don't want to know." But it was too late. The transformation that had begun in my body was now reaching my mind. Memories of my old life, my home, my family, my humanity, seemed more and more distant, like a dream fading at dawn. In their place, new memories emerged, memories of eons spent in darkness and silence, waiting, memories of worlds consumed and remade, memories of a cosmic hunger that could never be satisfied. I dragged myself to the communication panel, determined to send one last message, a warning to anyone who could hear. My hands, now more like claws covered in a dark, oily substance, trembled over the controls. This is Officer Winters," I began, my voice laced with sobs. "If you're receiving this message, stay away. Don't come after us. The signal is a trap. They're waiting. They've always been waiting." A spasm of pain shot through me, and I fell forward, my forehead hitting the dashboard. When I straightened up, I saw that I had left a mark, not of blood, but of something dark and shiny that moved with a life of its own. I don't know how much longer I can fight it," I continued, the words now coming out with difficulty. "I'm changing, becoming something else, something that shouldn't exist." Another spasm, stronger this time. I felt something moving under my skin, as if my organs were rearranging themselves. "Please," I begged, no longer sure whether to the imaginary recipient of my message or to some indifferent god. "Destroy this ship if you find it. Don't let it get anywhere. Don't let them spread." The chanting in my head reached a deafening crescendo. My vision darkened at the edges, and I felt my consciousness fading. With a last effort of will, I pressed the button to send the message. I had no idea if anyone would receive it, if it would make any difference, but it was all I could do. As darkness enveloped me once again, I had one last terrible vision. I saw the Earth, blue and beautiful from space, and I saw something approaching it, something vast and ancient and hungry. We were coming home. and we were bringing the end of everything with us. The last thing I heard before losing consciousness was the sound of my own laughter, a sound that had nothing human about it. The universe had plans for us, plans that went far beyond our limited understanding. And I, who had once been Scientific Officer Winters, was now just a pawn in a cosmic game that had begun before time and would only end when the last star went out. The transformation was almost complete, and with it, a new chapter in the history of the cosmos was about to begin. Time had lost all meaning. It could have been hours, days, or millennia since I sent that last desperate message. My consciousness floated in an ocean of darkness, occasionally emerging for brief moments of agonizing lucidity. In those moments, I saw myself, or what was left of me, reflected in the metallic surfaces of the ship. The creature staring back at me was a biomechanical nightmare, a grotesque fusion of flesh, metal, and something else. Dark, glowing tentacles emerged from my skin, intertwining with the ship's systems. I could no longer tell where I ended, and the ship began. Even more disturbing were the moments when I could think clearly. Fragments of my old personality fought against the alien consciousness that now inhabited my mind. Memories of my life on Earth, the smell of freshly cut grass, the taste of coffee in the morning, the sound of laughter from loved ones, seemed to belong to someone else, to a life lived eons ago. "It's still me," I muttered to the emptiness of the ship, my voice a cacophony of human and non-human sounds. "I'm still Simon Winters. But was I really? With each passing moment, I felt my individuality dissolving into something larger, more vast. The entity that now shared my consciousness had no concept of me or you, of individual or species. It was a collective, a hive mind that stretched across time and space. In one of those moments of clarity, I dragged myself to the control panel. The displays flashed with information that my human brain could no longer process, but my new consciousness absorbed with ease. We were approaching Earth at an impossible speed, bending the very fabric of space-time. The horror of this realization was almost enough to make me regain control. Almost. "No," I growled, my fingers, now more like biomechanical claws, struggling to alter the ship's course. "I can't let that happen." But my body no longer obeyed my commands. I watched helplessly as my limbs moved of their own accord, recalibrating systems and adjusting our trajectory. The voice in my head, no longer a chant but a cosmic symphony of knowledge and purpose, assured me that everything was as it should be, that this was inevitable, that it was part of a larger cycle that my limited mind could not comprehend. Images flowed through my consciousness, distant worlds consumed by living darkness, entire civilizations transformed and assimilated, the very structure of the universe being rewritten, and in each image, I saw myself, or versions of myself, playing my part in this great cosmic transformation. "We are not conquerors," the voice whispered in my mind. "We are catalysts, agents of change and evolution. Through us, the universe knows itself." Part of me wanted to believe. I wanted to embrace this new existence, this cosmic perspective that made my previous life seem insignificant. But something inside me, a stubborn core of humanity, still resisted. With a superhuman effort, I managed to access the ship's communication system. Perhaps, I thought desperately, there was still time for one last warning. Was Officer Simon Winters," I began, my voice a grotesque mixture of organic and synthetic sounds. "To anyone who can hear, the Earth is in danger. We are no longer human. We are something else, something beyond comprehension." A spasm of pain went through me, and for a moment I lost control. When I came to my senses, I realized that I had destroyed the communication panel. My last chance of redemption, lost. Laughing bitterly, a sound that made the walls of the ship vibrate in sympathy, I turned away from the controls. Whatever was about to happen was now beyond my control. As I floated through the ship's corridors, now more organic than mechanical, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. From the initial excitement of discovery, to the terror of realization, and now, to this strange acceptance. I realized that I was no longer just Simon Winters, nor was I entirely the alien entity. I was something new, a synthesis of human and other, of finite and infinite. As we got closer to Earth, I felt a growing anticipation. It was no longer fear, nor even resignation. It was purpose. A feeling that, despite everything, I had a part to play in the great cosmic drama that was about to unfold. Earth appeared in the main viewfinder, a blue and green orb floating in the vastness of space, so fragile, so unaware of what was to come. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness for all that would be lost, but then the alien consciousness showed me what would come next, a new world, a new form of existence that would transcend everything we knew. "It's not the end," I muttered, both to myself and to the rapidly approaching planet. "It's just the beginning." As the ship began its final descent, I closed my eyes, now multifaceted sensor organs that perceived much more than just light. I let myself be enveloped by the cosmic symphony that was now an integral part of me. Officer Simon Winters had gone on a mission to save an alien civilization. Now he was returning as the herald of a transformation that would reshape not just the Earth, but the entire cosmos. The universe was about to take its next evolutionary step, and we, me and the entity that now shared my existence, would be the guides on this unimaginable journey. As the Earth's atmosphere began to envelop our ship, I smiled. The future was coming, and it would be beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. Entering the Earth's atmosphere was like diving into an ocean of memories. Every molecule of air that touched our hybrid ship seemed to carry echoes of a life that was no longer mine. The blue of the sky, so familiar and yet so strange, awoke in me a last spark of humanity. "Home," I muttered, the word sounding strange in my transformed mouth. But was it really home? The Earth below us seemed so small, so fragile. Seen through my new senses, I could perceive the currents of life pulsing through it, the intricate web of ecosystems and civilizations. All this was about to change, and I would be the catalyst. Our ship, now more of a living organism than a mechanical construction, descended gently through the clouds. We chose a remote location for our first contact, a vast forest far from large population centers. Not out of mercy or strategy, I realized, but because the abundant life there would be the perfect breeding ground for what was to come. When we touched the ground, I felt as if the whole forest had held its breath. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, slowly, the ship's hatch opened. I took my first step on Earth not as Simon Winters, but as something new, something beyond. My body, now a grotesque fusion of flesh, metal and alien matter, reacted to the Earth's air, to the microorganisms, to the planet's own gravity. I felt every cell of my being vibrating in tune with the world around me, and then it began. From my feet, now more like roots than human limbs, dark filaments began to spread across the forest floor. Century-old trees shuddered at the first contact, their leaves acquiring a strange, metallic sheen. Birds fell from the sky, their bodies contorting into impossible transformations before they even hit the ground. Insects emerged from the ground in swarms, their exoskeletons reflecting a light that came from no visible source. One part of me, the part that still clung to the last vestiges of Simon Winters, wanted to scream, wanted to stop this somehow. But the other part, the part that now understood the greater purpose of it all, just watched with an almost clinical fascination. "It's not destruction," the voice in my mind assured me. "It's evolution, transformation, the next step." And I could see it. Through my new senses, I could see how each organism touched by our presence was not dying, but becoming something more, something that transcended the limitations of its previous form. As the transformation spread through the forest, I began to hear, not with my ears, but with every fiber of my being. It was the song I had heard before, on the ship, but now amplified millions of times. It was the symphony of change, the anthem of a new dawn for the Earth. Forest animals, attracted by this irresistible song, began to emerge from the shadows. I saw deer whose antlers now glowed with living circuits, wolves with coats that moved like liquid mercury, birds of prey whose wings seemed made of pure energy. They approached me not with fear, but with a kind of reverence. I understood then that I was no longer just Simon Winters, nor even just an emissary of the alien entity. I had become something more, a nexus, a focal point for the transformation that was sweeping the planet. Hours passed like seconds as I watched the change spread in concentric waves from our point of arrival. Distant cities began to glow with a strange light as the transformation reached them. The sky itself seemed to be changing, impossible colors dancing among the clouds. It was then that I heard the first sounds of human resistance, sirens in the distance, the distant roar of airplane engines. Humanity, of course, would fight back. They couldn't understand, not yet. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness. I remembered beloved faces, dreams and aspirations that now seemed so small in the face of the vastness of what was happening. But then, the greater consciousness that now dwelt within me showed me the future. I saw a transformed Earth, no longer limited by borders or petty conflicts. I saw an evolved humanity, capable of touching the stars not with machines, but with their own expanded minds. I saw a planet no longer separate from the cosmos, but an integral part of it. This is what we were always meant to be, I realized, my voice now a chorus of millions. As the sun set on this first day of the new era, I rose, my body now a living tower stretching towards the changing sky. The transformation was just beginning, and I would be its herald, its guide, its guardian. Simon Winters had gone on a mission to save an alien civilization. Now he was returning to save his own species from limitations they didn't even know they had. Tomorrow would bring challenges, resistance, perhaps even conflict. But it would also bring wonders beyond imagination. And I would be there to witness every moment, every change, every step towards a cosmic destiny that we were only just beginning to glimpse. Night fell over a changing Earth, and the stars above seemed to twinkle in approval. The universe was watching, waiting, and we were finally answering its call. The dawn of the seventh day brought with it a reality that no human being could have imagined a week earlier. The sky, once a soothing blue, now pulsed with colors that defied comprehension, reflections of an expanded reality that few eyes still purely human could bear. Icon, who had once been Simon Winters, was watching from the top of a structure that was neither organic nor inorganic, but something completely new. My body, now an amalgam of transformed flesh, alien technology and pure cosmic energy, stretched for miles, merging with the ever-changing landscape. The transformation of the Earth was almost complete. Entire cities had become vast living organisms, their skyscrapers now pulsating towers of bioluminescence. The oceans glowed with a consciousness of their own, each drop of water a microcosm of infinite possibilities. But the change had not come without resistance. In the early days, armies had marched, missiles had been launched, in humanity's desperate attempt to preserve a way of life that now seemed terribly limited. I observed these battles not with anger or sadness, but with an understanding that transcended human emotions. Each bomb that exploded only accelerated the transformation, the energy released being absorbed and redirected. Each fallen soldier rose again, not as a mindless zombie, but as something more, a being who was beginning to understand his place in the grand cosmic design. Now, on the seventh day, the last bastions of pure humanity were falling, not by force, but by the inevitability of change. It was then that I felt a familiar presence approaching. Christina Hayes, once my commander, now a creature of alien beauty, her form fluid and glowing. "Simon," she spoke, her voice a mixture of sounds that reverberated through multiple dimensions. "The last ones are ready." I nodded, a gesture that sent waves of energy through the transformed landscape. It was time for the final act of this great metamorphosis. We descended together into what used to be the center of New York. Times Square, once a symbol of consumerism and pop culture, was now a vast organic amphitheater. In the center, the last untransformed humans, world leaders, scientists, philosophers, were waiting for us. Their eyes, still purely human, widened in fear and amazement at the sight of us. I realized that, to them, we must have looked like monsters, abominations. But I also saw curiosity, and perhaps in some, a glimmer of understanding. "You fear us," I said, my voice echoing not just through the air but through their own minds. "You think we've come to destroy, to conquer, but you're wrong." Images flowed out of me, showing them the vastness of the cosmos, the terrible beauty of realities beyond human comprehension. I showed them the future, not just of the Earth, but of all existence. "We are you," I continued, "evolved, transformed, yes, but still carrying the essence of what it means to be human. What we offer is not death, but transcendence." I saw tears in the eyes of many of them. Tears of understanding, of fear, of admiration. One man stepped forward. I recognized him as the Secretary General of the United Nations. "What if we refuse?" he asked, his voice trembling but determined. Christina replied, her form shimmering with emotions beyond the human spectrum. "There is no refusal. Just as a child cannot refuse to grow, you cannot refuse to evolve. But you can choose to embrace change, to guide it with your unique wisdom and experience." For a long moment, there was silence. Then slowly, one by one, they stepped forward. Not with resignation, I realized, but with an acceptance born of understanding. As the transformation enveloped them, I felt something I hadn't expected, a wave of almost human emotion. Joy, sadness, nostalgia all mixed together in a symphony of feelings that reverberated through the Earth's new collective consciousness. As the last untransformed human joined us, I felt the final change begin. The whole Earth shook, not with destruction, but with rebirth. Every atom on the planet vibrated in harmony with the cosmos. I raised my many arms to the ever-changing sky, and for the first time since it all began, I spoke not as Simon Winters, not as an alien emissary, but as the unified voice of a new form of existence. "We're ready." The sky opened up, not in a physical way, but in a way that transcended three-dimensional reality. I felt the presence of the ancients, the cosmic entities who had guided us up to this point. Not with words, but with pure understanding, they welcomed us into the galactic community. The Earth began to move, not in its familiar orbit, but through the very fabric of space-time. Our destination, the center of the galaxy, where wonders and challenges beyond imagination awaited. As we traveled, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here, from the solitude of deep space to the terror of the unknown, and finally to acceptance and transcendence. I realized that this was not an end, but a beginning. What awaited the new humanity among the stars? What part would we play in the great cosmic drama? The possibilities were endless, the opportunities limitless. A last spark of what Simon Winters had been smiled within the vast consciousness that I had become. We had set out to respond to an alien distress call. In the end, we discovered that the distress call was for ourselves, a call to evolve, to become something more. And we responded. Oh, how we responded. As the Earth, no longer just a planet, but a living cosmic entity, sailed towards its new destination, I knew with absolute certainty our true journey was just beginning. The universe was waiting, vast and mysterious, and we were finally ready to embrace it in all its terrible and wonderful glory.